Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Greetings and happy National Cheese Soufflé Day, listeners, and welcome to the 77th episode of Movie Oubliette, the intercontinental podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, hoping to go back to the cinema soon in Cambridge, UK.
And me, Dan, rapidly running out of surfaces to put all my synths on in Melbourne, Australia.
That's a good problem to have. We focus on sci-fi, fantasy and horror movies because we love mysterious comets, exploring deserted landscapes and beating zombies to the bargains in a shopping mall.
Yeah.
Dan, how are you with your towering synth problem?
Well, it's, no surfaces anymore and plenty of cables everywhere. So it's a safety hazard just being in this room.
Well, you'll just have to be like Lematos and buy a purpose-built enormous studio that you can fill with racks and racks of synths and still socially distance with your bandmate.
That would be the dream, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And National Soufflé Day, really?
Yes, it's National Cheese Soufflé Day, apparently. Not something I can partake in, obviously, unless there's a vegan cheese soufflé. I can't imagine it. It sounds disgusting.
I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever even eaten a soufflé.
No, me neither. I know they're devilishly hard to make without them popping and going flat. But other than that, I'm complete soufflé virgin, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Was it a 70s thing? It feels quite 70s.
Yeah.
Or was that fondue? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, all of those things.
I'm just totally not up on my cheese lore, I'm afraid. So yeah, do write in, people, if you can advise us on cheese-related
Soufflé
matters.
Experts out there, please educate us.
Please do.
And Conrad, have they been talking to us in the mailbag and teaching us new things?
Of course, yes. We have a new patron, so a shout out quickly to Matthew Fisher.
Ooh.
Thanks for supporting the show. Really appreciate having you on board.
Welcome.
Yes, we've heard from lots of people. We heard from Krista, a new listener who found us through our episode on coherence. And she said, one of my favourite movies. And now I have your theme tune happily stuck in my head.
That's the goal.
Yes, indeed. Earworms. She says, it's so nice to hear you mention how early the jumps start in the film too. So many people seem to miss the importance of the Roswell comments.
Yes.
Jake Armistead on Maniac Cop said, it's ridiculous how many really good horror films Tom Atkins was in during the 80s, seemingly more so than any other actor I can think of.
We did mention them, right? Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, we did, yeah. Loads of them. I haven't seen all of them, so maybe we could try to collect them all. We also heard from Lorene Landon, who said, I starred in this movie too.
She did. That's amazing.
She did. She was great in it. I think she was feeling a bit left out because we did a social that was focusing on Bruce. So we've done a social now that focuses just on Lorene and how fantastic she is in the movie as Teresa. So hopefully she will feel less overlooked. Bless her. And of course we heard from good old Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Hey, Serge.
Hey, Serge. Who said, Maniac Cop is pure schlock, but it's good schlock. Decent production values, several subverted expectations, and a somewhat prescient pervasive distrust of cops. There's a scene where a detective builds a psych profile for the killer, and someone points out that even he's a match. I love it when Movie Oubliette does Coin of Fate episodes. I feel like it gets at the heart of reviewing schlocky cult cinema. even if the movie's good at what it does, your mileage with that sort of thing may vary.
Yes. I do see a pattern, though. The really schlocky, sort of so bad it's good movies tend to be down my alley.
Yeah.
And you're more about the nostalgic childhood kids' adventure movies from the 80s.
Yeah. I know, I get all starry-eyed and I just can't see the faults, and you're sat there saying, what?
Yeah.
What is this? Yeah. No, it's good fun. It balances out. And sometimes it is really just down to a coin toss.
Yeah.
One final thing I would like to mention is that Serge also commented when I posted that both of the Ewok TV movies are now on Disney+. I posted this on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And Serge, puzzlingly, initially posted, finally going to confirm whether or not Wilford Brimley fucks. Which
Really?
was baffling. Different movie from the one we saw.
Definitely.
But then he corrected himself and said, says fuck. So... Phew.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's debatable what he actually says.
right. Okay. Well,
Serge,
and also, who
please
knows
tell
what
us.
Disney Plus has done to it?
Oh, that's true. That's true. So what are we going to be talking about today, Conrad? Any expletives in this movie?
Well, it's always a journey of discovery. Let's find out over here. I seem to be in some sort of surgical room.
Okay.
It's underground. There are no windows in here. Oh, and there's a body.
Oh.
Looks like it's being drained of blood.
Oh, that sounds gross.
Yeah. Oh, it's clutching a film. Hang on. I'll grab that. Coming back.
Oh, Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
Did you get it all right?
I did, yes. And our film today is Night of the Comet, a 1984 American science fiction comedy horror film written and directed by Thom Eberhardt, starring previous guests Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelli Maroney, as well as Robert Beltran, Sharon Farrell, Mary Woronov, and Geoffrey Lewis.
Ah, yes. I have to admit, I had not seen this movie before we had Catherine Mary Stewart on, so
Yes.
I had to smile and nod, I think, in that episode quite a bit.
No, that's fair enough. We do have a bonus episode for patrons that has both Kelli and Catherine talking about their memories of Night of the Comet and funny things like what happened to their costumes and stuff. So it's really good if you want to have a listen.
Yes, check it out.
So in this movie, Californians eagerly await two things: Christmas and the flyby of a comet that hasn't been seen in our solar system since the dinosaurs went extinct.
Oh, wow.
Strange, that.
That's a long time.
That's quite some big orbit. Our two heroines, Valley Girl siblings Regina and Sam, wake up after coincidentally both sleeping in steel-walled structures to discover that everyone else has either been reduced to a pile of red dust and stylish 80s clothes or turned into flesh-eating zombies. All that's left is a friendly truck driver called Hector and a bunch of bunker-dwelling scientists whose interests in the Belmont sisters may be less than benevolent. Will they escape being harvested for blood serum or eaten alive? Will they find a reliable automatic weapon? And can they find an outfit to match? Find out after the break.
All the woes of the apocalypse
Indeed.
in the 80s.
Yes. And we'll be joined by a special guest for this episode. So, yeah, can't wait to explore this one at last.
Yeah.
We are very excited today to be joined by the other co-founder of RetroBlasting. We're collectors at heart and love completing sets. She's the co-host of every Generation X's favourite podcast, the wildly entertaining and exquisitely researched Dreamland. Please welcome Melinda Mock.
Hey.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, it's really great to talk to you. How are you doing in these strange times?
I'm doing quite well. Luckily for me, I already work from home.
Bonus.
I've just settled in and I'm doing all sorts of different research on all sorts of different things. And as you know, I love doing that. So I was happy to divert to our movie for tonight and spend some time with it. It's been really fun.
Yeah, so the film that you've chosen for us to talk about today, Night of the Comet, is kind of interesting in the context of the experience we've been going through. I was wondering if you could kick us off by talking about why you chose it, when you first saw it, and what it means to you.
Sure. So I saw this movie probably in around 1988. I was living in Alaska on a military base. My dad is Army.
Wow.
I saw it at a slumber party at a friend's house there on base, and I immediately fell in love with Catherine Mary Stewart's character because I felt like she was very much like me, although I was only like 11 or 12 at the time. But I had the hair. I'll send you a picture. I had the hair. I had the same color eyes. You know, I was in love with her wardrobe. In Alaska at that time, everyone talked like Valley girls, way more than these girls do in this movie. And being an Army brat like this character, I sort of have maybe a slightly different perspective, at least from what I can tell. And I can't wait to talk about that with you guys. But I love that both of the sisters were very independent and kind of tomboyish and not afraid of stuff. And that really resonated with me as an Army brat. And weirdly, today is Military Brat Day, sort of an annual observation of all of us who served without wanting to serve. And I think that really plays into this movie a lot. At least that's my take on it. Maybe I'm a little biased. But I did love this movie, and I hadn't seen it. I kind of weirdly forgot about it. And sort of thinking of a movie that would be sci-fi and horror, it just snapped into my brain, and I looked it up, and I was like, I've got to rewatch this movie. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's great. It is one that people forget. And I saw it on TV in the 80s, but hadn't revisited it since. Dan, had you seen it before?
No. So I have to thank you, Conrad, for introducing me to this movie. Never heard of it. Only watched it before we had Kelli on because I thought, well, I should probably watch a movie that she's in before she's on the podcast, and hadn't watched it until recently for this episode. So yeah, it was strange because I watched this before 2020 and then watching it now, it's got a different tone. Like you really relate to it a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yes. It's classed as an empty city movie, very much in the tradition of some of the 50s science fiction thrillers like Target Earth, Day of the Triffids, something like that. The shots of the Belmont sisters walking out post-Comet visitation to discover that the world is no longer particularly well inhabited apart from piles of clothes and brick dust is eerily resonant. It's funny because I thought I was coping really well with lockdown last year when it kicked off, and somebody in Cambridge did one of these drone videos where they flew a drone around the centre of the city and it was empty. And it is usually so full of life with students and tourists. I sort of broke down watching it.
Yeah.
That's the part of the film, the aspect of the film that stuck with me is the visuals of the red filtered skies and the empty city and these two sisters, one of them in a cheerleader costume, walking through this landscape.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I thought I was doing really well because I'm fairly introverted myself and I don't tend to go out all that much anyway. But after about 4 or 5 months, and then, like you said, you would see that there's no one outside and you haven't gone outside and you can't see people. You kind of start getting that. The Shining starts getting on, you know, like you start to feel like you're having cabin fever a little bit. So
yeah. Dan, you haven't had lockdown quite as much. So.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, it was, definitely a few months last year where, everyone was at home. But I was actually still going to work and it was just so peaceful. Like I would catch a train and there would be no one on the train and I'd walk through the city and there was no one in the city and I'd get to work and there would be 2 people at work.
Yeah.
It was quite relaxing, but it was a strange time. And this movie really kind of encapsulates that strangeness. I don't know how they filmed it as well, because it's filmed in LA, right? How's that possible? It's a low budget film.
Yeah, very small budget, 700,000, I think. But oddly enough, when I listened to the commentaries, the filmmakers seemed to suggest that it wasn't that difficult to find LA downtown empty if you filmed on a Sunday.
Yes.
Really? Wow. Just Sunday.
Just
I
Sunday.
like the end of the world.
Yeah, not the end of the world, just Sunday. And I think for the scene where there's a car in the middle of the street, which I believe is the director's car.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
right. The Mercedes is his, and it's his license plate, actually.
Oh, wow.
He didn't even
Oh, no.
have the production designer change that out. And the production designer says, oh, well, if he had told me, I would have totally changed that out.
Oh, right.
Would have been wise, probably. But yeah, for that scene, apparently all they needed to do was hold traffic for 45 seconds
Oh, okay.
and got the shots and then got out of the way. And yeah, I mean, they did film at Christmas time as well, which is why the film is kind of a Christmas movie. And the only reason for it is because they knew there would be Christmas decorations around and they knew they couldn't afford to redress all of the shops and all the streets. So
Oh, wow.
they just said, okay, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah. It's amazing seeing sort of the troubleshooting of low budget filmmaking.
Yeah. But it doesn't look like a low budget movie.
It doesn't to me.
Yeah. I think the overall atmosphere and the red filter really helps. But I think some of the effects, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit low budget to me.
For sure. There are certain moments that are pretty, like you said, low budget. But then there are other things like the makeup effects on the zombies are pretty good. Like, it's very respectable. Of course, it's David Miller, right? And
Yeah.
he worked on Nightmare on Elm Street and has done a lot of other really great effects stuff too. So, you know, it seems like this movie did a great job of utilizing the budget that they had very, very well and getting really good people who were very good at what they did. And so they could almost work with a skeleton crew.
I did have a small issue with a movie about zombies not having a lot of zombies. Like there were like 5 minutes of zombie time, I guess, in the entire film.
I felt the same way. And then when I listened to, again, the commentary, and I can't remember which person it was, I think it was the director, Thom Eberhardt, he talked about how basically he threw the zombies in towards the end. It was never intended to be about zombies or a horror movie at all. It was supposed to be sort of a tongue-in-cheek script about the last person on Earth or the last people on Earth kind of thing, empty city type of movie. And then he threw those in because he knew it was going to be airing at drive-ins with things like Terminator. So I think he threw them in for that crowd. Right.
Right, the Midnight Crew. That makes sense because you could actually take all the zombie scenes out and it wouldn't affect the film really because there's a lot of dream sequences and sort of standalone zombie attacks that don't even need to be in the film.
Agreed.
That is true, yeah. So how many zombies actually are there? The traffic cops are a dream.
Yes.
There's the guy in the alley, and then there are all the stock boys.
Ah, yes.
And I guess you could technically count the scientists as well.
Yes.
And there was that scene where Hector goes to try and visit his family.
Oh, right, the little boy.
That kid.
Yes.
But it's almost like that whole scene is almost like you could easily cut that out and it wouldn't affect the film.
There are a lot of scenes like that, weirdly, actually.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it adds some emotional weight and development to Hector's character.
It does. That's true. That's true.
Robert Beltran, who is top billed in this movie, which I don't think is right, because he's
not really in it.
Not the main character.
No, he's very supporting, but I guess we all know why.
I guess also, to be fair, he had just been in Eating Raoul, and I think he was more well-known perhaps than the rest of the cast at that point in his career.
Yeah, and he became much more well-known, I guess.
Yes, Chakotay.
Not to me, but maybe to other people.
Chakotay. He talked about how the producers were desperate to get him into the film, and they kept promising him so many different things. Like, they initially envisioned his character being much more stereotypical Latino. And
right.
Robert Beltran was just like, no, I don't want to play that character. And so finally they said, okay, well, you can play him however you want to. Just be in the movie. He was like, okay. And they said, and we'll give you top billing. So they were basically using it as a bargaining chip, and that's really why, I believe, at least according to Robert Beltran, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay. I did like that the main characters in this movie are two women and a Latino.
Yeah.
And not, yeah, like you said, not a stereotype, cliche, ridiculous Latino as well. So it was really refreshing.
Agree.
Yeah, it's two Valley girls and a blue-collar worker at the end of the world. And the thing that I particularly like about it is that it's not looking down on any of these characters.
No.
You could easily see a version of this movie where the Valley girls are just the butt of every joke. But even the moment where, what are the girls going to do the first time they find out the world is empty? They'll go shopping. But it's not treated as a joke. You're actually along for the ride with them. And there's a very good reason why Reggie coaxes Sam to go shopping at that point, because she is actually really depressed. Like, the reality of their situation has just hit her in a very emotional scene
Yes.
that they threatened to cut out of the movie at one point, until they did a test screening and suddenly realized that all the young women in the audience it was really resonating with them. So they left it in. But yeah, so even sort of the most stereotypical Valley Girl scene, you know, they're not treated as dumb or the butt of a joke, which I think is really important.
I agree. I think that the characters you could, certainly with Reggie's character, you could make her character a man and it wouldn't fundamentally change the plot or the movie. And in fact, towards the beginning, they sort of subvert that horror movie trope of, she sleeps with her boyfriend or the guy she's sort of casually seeing in the film projection booth. And not only does she not get killed afterward for doing so, she doesn't make a big deal out of like being super hung up on him. She seems very casual about it. And he actually is the one that gets killed, which is
That's true.
kind of refreshing in a way. But they also, like, there's no penalty for her character for having had sex, which is so common in horror movies. Not that this really is a straight horror movie, but I really loved that. And I loved that she was sort of portrayed as really loving video games, which is normally, like, that same actress is in The Last Starfighter. It's, of course, the male lead who is super into the video game thing. And so it's kind of cool to see a female character not making a point of like, I'm a girl and I don't need your help, men. But it's just sort of like that's who she is. And she's just very comfortable with herself, which is awesome to see.
Exactly. I think that's the key point. Like, have a strong female character, but don't state it. You know, don't make it so obvious that I'm strong and female and I don't need a man. Just show it. You know, we don't need to hear people spelling it out to us.
Yes.
And don't turn them into a man either.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, the elephant in the room about this movie is that it really heavily inspired Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Joss Whedon. And even the dog's name is Buffy.
Yes.
And there's the girl in the cheerleader outfit and all of these
noticed
things.
that.
And Joss Whedon has been very open about that.
I hadn't made that connection. But yes, she's a great example of a strong female and yet still feminine character. Although it's nice to have Reggie display some characteristics that are typically associated with men in movies, such as her competitiveness over the high scores on that Tempest video game.
Yeah, what is that game?
Oh, you guys aren't familiar with Tempest?
No.
I guess I'm from a bit of a younger generation, but it just looks
That's
like
true.
lines and colored dots on a screen. I don't even know what's going on.
Oh, Dan, welcome to the 80s.
Right. Like, you really had to use your imagination to really sort of immerse yourself in this, like, game, I guess.
Yes.
Inverted commas.
Yeah, it was a weird game. It wasn't my favorite, but I definitely saw it in the arcades back in the day. So
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, Conrad, continue.
No, I was just going to say that it's just so great to see her so desperate to fill the high score table with her initials and being outraged that some other person has injected themselves in their DMK. And this was set up as a tease at the beginning of the film, like 4 minutes in, and it's not resolved until I think the penultimate shot.
Yeah.
right, and was never actually going to be resolved.
Oh,
Right.
really? Yeah, because I did think it was a strange punchline. It's like, what?
It wasn't supposed to be, and I think the director and writer, his only purpose in having that in there was to show her competitiveness. Which, side note, is very funny because if a person were to slide into 6th place, then whoever was in 6th place would just bump down to 7th place. They don't just go away.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think the director's wife and several other people kept saying, hey, who is DMK? And so he finally was just like, he realized at the end that he needed to come up with a male character for Sam's character to get with.
Yes.
Right.
So that she wasn't left all alone. And so he sort of just said, well, this will be DMK. And it'll be like, I did that on purpose. Haha. And that's very Joss Whedon too, where it's like, I've been setting this up for 2 years. But I don't know if I really believe that, Joss. But okay, we'll go with it.
Right.
Because, of course, Sam wasn't supposed to be there at the end of the movie either.
That's right.
Was she supposed to die in that scene?
Yes.
That devastating scene. Wow.
Yeah. So the scene where the scientists finally catch up with them and they separate the sisters, and you know that this isn't going to go well, that something's wrong because there's a suspended note on the score and the helicopter's pulling away and you're looking down and you're thinking, oh, this is bad. But yes, that was supposed to be Sam's final scene. She was supposed to die and vanish from the movie. I just cannot see that working.
No.
How bittersweet would that have been? I don't know. That's kind of heartbreaking. And this movie, I do not think this movie is funny. I'm going to go on record and say, I know everyone talks about it being funny. And I'd love to know, Dan, if you think it was funny, especially having not seen it until more recently. But I don't think it's funny, but I certainly don't think its tone would support her dying there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
When I first watched it, obviously I didn't know that she was going to not die. I was heartbroken in that scene because she's such an amazing, beloved character. And when she came back, I was like, oh, phew, okay, at least it's one of those movies where no one dies. But I did find this movie funny, actually. There's like a lot of great one-liners and they're all said by the two girls. But yeah, I think what holds this movie together, there's a lot of flaws, but the two girls really hold this film together and really connect you as an audience to the end.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the two female characters bring the audience along because they're just so lovable and you just enjoy seeing them. In fact, for me, I wanted to see them navigating this empty landscape. And I was kind of disappointed when it went into the whole scientists in the underground bunker
Me too.
segment at the end.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the film 28 days later. I think it's heavily influenced by this movie. And to see it make the same narrative mistake and end up with the military guys starting their own civilization and being horribly misguided and exploitative, I feel it's kind of sad that they made the same mistake and weren't able to improve upon this movie. But I don't know. What did you think about that development, Melinda? Were you along for the ride the whole time?
No, I love this movie. I'll start out by saying that. And I don't hate the third act, but I also don't love the third act. I sort of equate this movie as going from Night of the Living Dead to Dawn of the Dead to Day of the Dead all in one movie.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, that's
wow.
true.
Yeah, the military aspect, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the scientists become the military/scientists that are in Day of the Dead. And I really like Day of the Dead, but it's a very different kind of movie. So going from two films like Night of the Living Dead and then Dawn of the Dead, it's like a completely different genre. And so that is what that third act feels like. You feel like it's gone into this weird, why are we in this bunker now? And who are these people? Their characters aren't nearly as defined as the girls and Robert Beltran even. And so what I do think is interesting about that is that you have the two girls and Hector are both quintessentially good, morally aligned characters, whereas the scientists, who are normally portrayed as very righteous dudes, they're the good guys in a lot of movies. The scientists, who are also, for the most part, your standard white guy, which I don't think that was the intent behind this movie at the time, but I just think it's an interesting read now. They're the bad guys because they are amoral. They don't care. They're willing to sacrifice children, for example, whereas Hector and Reggie and Sam are willing to risk their lives to help save each other and to save these kids that they don't even know.
Yeah.
And so I feel like those are your two opposing forces in the movie. But it's just like, we don't know anything about the agenda other than, I guess, those scientists just want to survive. That's not a very compelling bad guy, I guess, if they're going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, yeah, they didn't spend the time to develop the characters of the scientists as well. They seem to hone in on that female scientist and then she kills herself. So it's like, what? Oh, okay. Who are we latching on to now? And the big villain, I just don't even know who he is. Like, he's barely in the film, so you don't really feel anything when they escape. He doesn't seem to be as bad as he's supposed to be. Like, I actually felt that the shopping mall bad guy was more menacing and evil and sort of anarchic in how he portrayed himself. But yeah, the scientists in particular as well just didn't seem like real scientists to me, especially in the sort of the grey jumpsuit with the really fashionable white belts that they had.
But their logo was on everything.
Oh, everything.
Yes. And it's very reminiscent of the one that's in Lost a few years later, quite a few years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the underground bunkers, the organization that's behind all of the mysteries in Lost, have like a maze logo as well. So
Okay.
maybe they were influenced by this movie too, although they were also unable to come up with a satisfying ending.
True.
No spoilers.
Both of them are really great in this movie, Catherine Mary Stewart. It's a slightly different role for her because I'm so used to her from The Last Starfighter playing the girl next door,
Yeah.
or the girl from the trailer next door, really, in that movie. But I'm so used to her playing those sorts of roles. To see her playing something this hard-edged was really quite refreshing. And for Kelli, playing, obviously she'd been playing the bad girl, for her to play somebody who's still got a razor sharp tongue on her, but has a heart of gold, really. It's kind of fun seeing both of them playing these roles and playing them so well. It ended with the two of them forging a lifelong friendship because they're still talking to each other on a daily basis to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I really love both of those characters. I love the way that they, even though one is a cheerleader and one's more of a tomboy, they're both able to take care of themselves. And that goes back to kind of what I was saying before about being a military brat, because you have to prepare yourself for losing a parent all the time. Frequently, they spend long periods of time away from you. So you're already used to existing in a world where you're taking care of yourself.
Right.
And so that's why I think they're so unflapped or nonplussed, I guess is the better word, when all of this happens, because they've already been taking care of themselves. Certainly their stepmother, Doris, is not a very maternal, kind person who's nurturing and, taking care of them. So they're just out there doing their thing. And so now they don't have all of the stuff on top of them that's preventing them from doing what they want. It's almost like, I remember that when I saw this movie before, just when I was a kid, thinking, how awesome would that be? Like if all of the adults were just gone and then I could just be myself and do what I want,
Yeah.
even if it's killing zombies. Like I feel like I could do it,
Yeah. I love how personally this resonates with you. I had an inkling that it would because I've heard you mention before that you were a military kid, and that resonates with me because my dad was Army too. So I understand the feeling of having to be resilient because every couple of years your whole life has to move somewhere else and you have to start all over. This has an additional element to it, though, with them being girls, in that it's clear that the dad, well, it's not absolutely clear, but I think it's strongly intimated that the dad wanted sons and has treated his daughters as though they were sons, getting them used to firearms, making sure that they can take care of themselves.
And my dad did all of that as well. And so I think
Really?
that's another reason. Like he really wanted a son and he really wanted me to be more of a tomboy, although I was kind of a tomboy, but I guess not enough of an Uzi-toting mama at age 12, But he did teach me self-defense. He taught me from an early age how to use a gun. He wasn't going to step in if kids were bullying me at school. It was, you need to learn how to fight your own battles, So it's a lot of that military mindset. I don't know if the director even intended that at all, but that is how it resonates with me. It's like, that's what it's like to be a military kid.
Yeah, it comes from a very true place, doesn't it? Whereas Buffy, as the cheerleader who can kill vampires, seems much more like a male fantasy figure that's constructed and not really paying off something that's genuine.
Right.
Sure.
I would have loved it if Buffy had been a military kid. I would have bought that a lot more, although I personally do love Buffy and also identify a lot with her character, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the two girls are badass. They can hold their own. They beat up guys. There's one scene, though, and this gets me every time in movies, and I hate it so much. It's right at the climax where they're getting attacked by a zombie, just out of the blue. Hector gets attacked. And Catherine Mary Stewart's character throws him a gun. Just let her use the gun. I hate that in movies.
Oh, that's a good point.
Where the female character is there just to throw the weapon to the male character to use.
You're right. And it really doesn't fit with her character, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
Yeah, if you're within throwing distance, you're within shooting distance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's
I mean-
faster, throwing a gun to use or just using the gun?
that's a really good point.
The one aspect that I think is a bit of a letdown, I've read in reviews how carefully handled the transition between irresponsible valley girls to taking on the full weight of the responsibility of rebuilding society and becoming middle-class conservatives. But I don't see the gradual transition myself. It seems like they are the characters they are until the final scene when all of a sudden Catherine Mary Stewart becomes this middle-class mom who's telling Kelli off all the time. And it's not ironic. You know, if they were playing a role and making fun of it, then it would be one thing. But it feels like she's genuinely changed.
Yeah.
And I find that a bit of a disappointing end for Reggie.
Yeah, it's an odd end. And also when Kelli exclaims as well, they look like the Brady Bunch. It's like, where did this come from?
It's my least favorite part of the film.
Yeah.
I have a thing about movies, like you just said, you hate it when this happens in movies. This is my least favorite thing, where any strong female character has to be made into a mom. It even happens to Ripley in Alien and then Aliens.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's in a roundabout way, but nonetheless, so is this. It's fairly roundabout. But she's now got to conform because she's a mom. And she has to then therefore have these feelings and do these things and play this role. I feel like if anything about the film is not pro-female, it's that. And I'm not saying that being a mom is bad. I'm just saying these kids could be kind of just part of the gang or part of the Scooby Gang or whatever you want to call it. Like they, instead of having to be like, oh, well, now we have to wear a suit and tie and we have to populate the earth and we have to do all of this stuff. And that means conforming to these weird societal norms that we have to carry forward into this new society we're going to build. It's like, why? You get to set the rules yourself.
And I would have been excited to see what they did with it.
Agree.
But all of a sudden, she's a mom with kids and a guy in a tux.
Yeah. And also Danny Mason Keener shows up as well to be,
Yes.
you know,
Of course.
the prize for Sam.
Yeah.
So she can ride off into the sunset.
In a sports car.
In a bikini or in a swimsuit anyway.
Yeah. I just want Catherine Mary Stewart to wake up in a cold sweat for it to be a horrible nightmare that she's having.
It's yet another dual-layered nightmare.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like stripping in a bathroom for no reason. I don't know what's going on in that scene.
I mean,
I felt wrong watching it. It's like, should I be
Yeah.
watching this? How old is Kelli right now?
I mean, I'm pretty sure the actress was of age, but she's playing a character who is not, so it makes it feel kind of creepy.
Yeah,
For sure.
it does.
It's a very strange ending, and it's kind of one of those movies where you love the characters, and I enjoy spending time with them, but in terms of like an arc or a plot or a development of what they're doing or any of those things, I struggle to sort of figure out, like, it wasn't like they were trying to solve what happened in terms of how people became dust. They weren't trying to, like in say, for example, Day of the Dead, their goal at the end of that film is to escape to this island, which they do. It's thin, but it's at least a goal.
Sure.
There wasn't really that. They just kind of stayed physically where they were and sort of as people where they were. So that's my other thing that I struggle with this film, but I still love it. I just wish that they could have done more in that third act to take us somewhere different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I had a problem with this movie. The pacing's a bit odd.
Yes. There are so many things about this movie, and the pacing is one of them that reminds me of the movie They Live.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Some of it is the long city shots to establish what things look like, which I think works really well, but it just sort of adds to that, like, very roomy, like, let's just settle in for an empty city, which I love, but I see what you're saying. Like, it does feel very slow.
Yeah.
I think it's just a different era of filmmaking, partly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be true. I didn't mind the establishing shots of the city. I thought that's what sort of gave the atmosphere of the film. It was just some of the dialogue scenes. As much as I loved all the dialogue, some of it just seemed very slow and clunky. Like it almost felt like, what's the point of this? Let's kind of move it forward, I guess.
I think normally in a film you're used to seeing that economy. You know, this scene is only here because it's going to pay off later, or it's informing this character or whatever. And I mean, in some cases, it is building these characters because that's why we love them, is because we kind of have gotten to know them.
That's true. Yeah.
However, I see what you're saying, because it's like there's a lot of it. And so it seems like some of it could have gone, and maybe we could have had a little bit more plot put in.
Yeah.
Or action. Yeah.
Action.
Yeah. I do agree as well with this film. It is a bit directionless. They don't really have a thing they're attaining or a place that they're going. They're just surviving. But I mean, is that the theme of the movie? Just surviving?
I mean, they're doing it with style.
Yes.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So it's trivia time, and usually it's Dan, but we thought we would hand this over to our guest, Melinda, who I think is famous for her excellent research. So Melinda, what fascinating nuggets of trivia have you uncovered from a pile of brick dust for us today?
Well,
No pressure.
I actually watched all of the movie commentaries that come with the Blu-ray release of this disc.
Wow.
And I sort of had them on in the background while I was doing other things, but they're very interesting, and I highly recommend all of them. But one of them that stuck out to me was, so at the beginning of the movie, there's the voiceover that's very like 50s, 60s sci-fi movie that's like talking about, you know, the comet was this Christmas present that the people of Earth weren't expecting this year, you know, very, very kind of cheesy on purpose. And apparently, Vincent Price was supposed to be the person to read that.
Oh, wow.
But he was in his later days, and so he wasn't well enough to do that recording. But that would have been a really great addition, I think, especially for the drive-in B-movie that this is.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
the other little fun note that I thought was interesting was in Hector's mother's house, when he goes there to sort of check on her and see if she's still alive or whatever, all of the photos that are in the house are all the director's wife's family members.
Oh, wow.
So his mother, the person you assume is Hector's mom, is his mother-in-law. And the girl who I guess is Hector's girlfriend, and he's picking up her photo to put it in the sack, is apparently his wife's niece or something like that, or cousin.
Oh, wow.
And people literally, he said, when he would go to see the movie in LA, they were like, "That's Mary," or whatever her name is. So I think that's pretty funny. He was like, "Yeah, I learned my lesson to not use family photos in movies anymore."
Wow. Yeah.
Or your own car with your registration number.
Correct.
Yeah. Just put your social security number on his next film then.
That's right.
Yeah.
Address.
Okay. And that's our trivia.
Yes.
The film does have a very distinct visual style. Kudos should go to Arthur Albert for the cinematography, because it may be a very simple solution, putting a gradiated red filter over those city scenes, but it's something I always remember. Like, my memory of this movie from watching it as a kid was of those red skies and that strange landscape that they created with it. And it's such a simple effect, but it's so effective.
It is.
I agree.
Yeah, it completely transforms
Yeah.
the look of the film. And it just makes it believable as well that it's the end of the world, you know, the red skies.
Yeah.
I kept thinking about all the different movies who have really strongly used color in that way. Like, especially red is the most obvious color. You know, you've got things like The Sixth Sense and American Beauty and even Schindler's List, where it always is sort of like this warning. I think red sky at morning, sailor's warning, and I kept seeing that, like when the sun's rising and there's just red everywhere. You're like, this is ominous because you don't actually, again, you don't see the people turn to dust. You just see like 40 pounds of brick dust laying on top of people's clothes in the middle of a cul-de-sac. So, which, by the way, that is funny. I will give you that. That is kind of funny just because of the way the clothes are laid out so perfectly, as though they fell horizontally.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the fake nails laying on top of the bed of red dust?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh, it's just, that's funny to me. Like, I literally laughed out loud.
Details, yeah.
Yeah, I did like Catherine Mary Stewart holding up one of Chuck's shoes and tipping out the red dust and say, this is Chuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed this when Catherine Mary Stewart walks in to the house. She walks right in and then up the stairs to go find her sister. And there's nothing there in terms of dust. But when they come down, there is dust and there's like a leash.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Buffy the dog.
Oh, the dog,
But that just appears there somehow in between those two shots. And it's just one of those discontinuity things. But it made me laugh a little bit, quite honestly.
Maybe Buffy was fine until she wandered into the room and then poof.
Oh.
So it has a distinctive look. It reminds me very much of other films around this time, like Vamp, which we
I was
saw
gonna mention
and
that,
talked about with Heather Wixson, like with the neon, that fantasy of a DJ booth.
Yeah.
All those primary coloured neon strips that are completely unmotivated. I don't know why they're there, but they look great.
I'm pretty sure the production designer had a friend at like the World of Neon. Literally, that's what he says. And so when he designed the radio station, he said, "Can I just like give you $500 so that you just bring over every single piece of neon you have?" And he literally did. I think it looks great. It doesn't look like a radio station at all, but it looks great.
Yeah, it does.
I started to believe at that age that that's what all radio stations look like. And then when I saw one, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Generally, you don't have the mixing desk in the middle of a huge echoey room.
No.
Generally.
I mean, that makes total sense now, having worked in podcasting for a while. But at the time, as a kid, I was like, yeah, that's how cool everybody is at a radio station, especially a rock radio station in L.A.,
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of music, another thing we often talk about is the score and the soundtrack. This is obviously the 80s. It's low budget, so the synthesizer rules. The composer, David Campbell, quite a popular guy, Canadian-American arranger, composer and conductor with 450 gold and platinum records.
Oh, wow.
Working with Ariana Grande, Beyonce, Aerosmith, Garth Brooks, and his own son, Beck.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Oh, it's Beck's dad. Wow.
It's amazing, isn't it? The score itself is not particularly remarkable. It kind of reminds me when we were talking about Maniac Cop Dan, the things that you were saying are good about Jay Chataway's score compared to the usual film that we watch from the 80s. I kind of thought, yeah, this must be ticking all of those boxes that Dan was talking about.
Ticking all the negatives or positives?
Well, I thought the negatives, because I thought maybe you might think this was more sort of situational, undeveloped, sort of random synth noodling.
Yes.
In this movie.
100%. Yeah. I felt like there was just no themes. It was just exciting music, sad music, tense music.
Yeah.
I felt nothing with the score. It just oozed 80s, and that's it.
I just think it makes this movie translate perfectly into the modern times.
Right.
Because, we don't have themes generally anymore for whatever reason. And you guys would know a lot more about that than me. But I agree. This movie doesn't even have the John Carpenter sort of vibe where, they live, as I mentioned it earlier, like they live kind of has a tone and a vibe, like in a mood. This is kind of, it almost harkens back to like the 50s horror sci-fi type movies where it's like almost like Star Trek, the very first original series television show, the first theme where it was like, the lady singing with the music. It kind of has that creepy sci-fi.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right. I think the opening title even has a sound that's very sort of theremin-y underneath the narration, which is very much 50s.
Yeah.
Here's the scientist telling you what's happening. these people have no idea what's coming, all of that kind of thing. So it is harkening back to 50s drive-in movies, I think.
Yeah. I think that the whole film is very drive-in movie. It's
Yeah.
very midnight cinema.
Yeah. And the soundtrack has been released. I'm not sure how popular it is.
Have you listened to it?
I haven't, no. I have to say, I don't know if these were popular artists in the US when this soundtrack came out, but I don't recognize any of them.
Oh,
Right.
100% on that. Obviously, in the film, they do use a cover of Cyndi Lauper's "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," and honestly, it's a pretty good cover. But yeah, I would definitely agree that this stuff almost feels 70s to me.
Yeah.
Late 70s, sort of easy listening adult contemporary.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, sort of light rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a cover. That's a Cyndi Lauper song.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
the actual song.
No.
It's a cover of a cover because Girls Just Want to Have Fun is also a cover.
Is it?
Ah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people don't. I actually did a podcast on it just because I was like, wow, that's a cover.
Wow.
But yeah.
So this one is voiced by Tammy Holbrook, who, fun piece of trivia, was the original voice of Tommy Pickles in Rugrats
Oh,
okay.
wow.
in the pilot episode, but
Oh.
did not make it into the full series. Bless her. So always the backup artist, never the bride. I think.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
It's the Mobley Awards. It's where we present our favourite red sky end of the world parts of the film in a number of sassy, kick-ass categories.
Best quote.
So this is probably a really obvious one, but it actually made me laugh out loud, which was the scene where the girls are shooting the car with the MAC-10s. And
yeah.
they keep jamming, and Sam says, Daddy would have gotten us Uzis. I love the behind-the-scenes story about it, which is that the guns were actually jamming, and they just couldn't keep dealing with it. So the director just said, here, just say this if it jams again, and she did, and then I think Catherine Mary Stewart actually improvised the whole, well, the car didn't seem to mind or whatever.
Oh, right.
I think she
yeah.
just improvised that, but that line cracked me up.
Yeah. My favorite is one of Kelli Maroney's lines. It's when she's arguing with her stepmother about the fact that she is cheating on their dad with another guy called Chuck. And she comes up with the classic line, "You were born with an asshole, Doris. You don't need Chuck." Which is just great. I want to use it in daily life.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you're right. Yes, that is an outstanding line.
There's so many great one-liners in this movie, though. So many. I actually wrote that down as well, but I've got to back up. So I loved the bit where Reg and Larry, her boyfriend, have just woken up the next day after a night of hanky-panky, and Larry is upset because the film hasn't been returned to him. So he decides to jump on his bike to go get the film, and Reggie says, "Oh, geez, don't I get an Egg McMuffin or anything?" And he says, "Do me a favor." And then Reggie immediately replies, "I did you a favor last night."
Best hair or costume.
There are so many great costumes from Kelly and Catherine Mary Stewart to choose from. I'm going to pick on something that's a little bit less obvious, which is the scientists. Because although they are wearing the most boring grey boiler suits that you've ever seen with their slightly nice accessorizing belts, they've also got these personal touches to them, like Mary Woronov's character's got black leg warmers.
Oh, right.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the guys called Roberts has got a little bow tie
Really? I didn't notice
on a
that.
boiler suit. Yeah, it's just little touches, but I'm sure you guys will pick some of the more iconic costumes in the movie.
For me, I think I already said this, but Reggie's outfit the morning after the comet, from her hair, which is, I can send you a picture of me from that time, and it's like, I was trying to have her hair. And that shirt, which is so reminiscent of Han Solo's shirt, honestly, with the fold-over flap, and those scrunchy boots, which were absolutely the rage, and they're very interesting looking, and the cut of her jeans, every single thing about her costume that morning after. I'm like, I would wear that today. I don't know if I would look nearly as good as Catherine Mary Stewart, but I would try.
How about you, Dan?
I guess we have to mention the iconic cheerleader outfit from Kelli Maroney. It's just amazing and so of its time, but just so kind of timeless at the same time. And she did mention that she kept it for a long time. Like only recently she sold it to a very respectable collector.
Yeah, on the basis that he'd give it back to her if she ever wanted it.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know what's more impressive, that or like whatever that football team would have looked like wearing teal and hot pink.
Yeah.
Most 80s moment.
This is a very random one, but in the scene where Sam is about to die, but she doesn't die, but in the mall where Mary Woronow's character is about to inject her, she says, "Oh, so you guys are geniuses, right?" And she says, "Yeah." And she goes, "We have a couple geniuses at my school. They're total wimps." And that is such an 80s perspective of geniuses, because subsequently, after the age of the internet, geniuses are like,
the richest people in the world.
And cool. And they were just most powerful people in the world. But in the 80s, boy, they were nerds and they were not cool at all.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're influencers.
Right.
Yeah. That's very true. And Dan?
I've written down here everything in capital letters.
I was going to say, as the non-80s native, this must look very 80s to you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the shopping mall scene, it's just like every 80s film had a shopping mall montage scene with a hit song that I thought was the actual song from Cyndi Lauper. But yeah, that montage, very 80s.
It is, yeah.
Very, very 80s.
Favorite scene?
My favorite scene is when Sam realizes that the boy that she had a crush on at school is dead, and she starts to cry. I mean, it's really gut-wrenching, and I know the director talks about it and thinks it's stupid. And
right.
I'm like, but that is why the movie works to me. Like, it's so... And it's not even just because I was a teenager when I saw it, because I think she is a teenager. And even though I'm an adult very much, I empathize with how lonely and sad that must feel to have every single person you've ever known be dead. Like, that's horrifying. So I think she does an amazing job she brushes it off pretty quickly, but I mean, she really gives it her all.
It's probably the most emotionally impactful scene in the movie.
What was your favorite, Conrad?
My favorite actually is the mall shootout, because I think that's really exciting. And that was kind of what I wanted the whole movie to be, more of a sort of I Am Legend, surviving in the city kind of situation, rather than the military base kind of stuff. And that's probably why I like Dawn of the Dead more than Day of the Dead. But there's just lots of great little moments in it. Like, I really like the moment where Reggie pretends to be one of the mannequins in the store
Yes,
to
excellent.
shoot at the guys. And because Catherine Mary Stewart is such a statuesque figure anyway, it just easily works.
I bought it. Like, I didn't see her. And I was like, oh my God, that's her.
Yeah, me neither.
Me too.
Perfect.
Such a good scene. Yeah. What about you, Dan, for favourite scene?
I don't know whether it's my favorite scene, but it just really shows the sort of audacity of Sam as a character, is when the confrontation with her stepmom, and there's a bit of few insults thrown, and then slap, punch in the face, just punch your stepdaughter. That's good parenting, good 80s parenting right there.
Yeah.
Most cliche sci-fi moment.
I think this movie started off as being a sci-fi movie, and then it sort of just tagged a little horror on there, just like as a little bit of like sprinkling a little salt and pepper on the top. So I picked favorite sci-fi cliche, and I think it's just that opening voiceover where you've got Science Man explaining everything about, I felt like I could see a guy sitting at a desk explaining it to me,
Yes.
Yeah. And it always starts with, a shot of the galaxy.
Yeah.
the stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I feel like I want to. I'm putting a mental check mark of what I think Dan's is going to be. I pretty much think I know, but we'll see if I'm right. So.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go Dan.
Well, the double nightmare wake up scene is just
okay. That's a good one.
The horror cliche where Sam dreams that she's driving a car and drinking a beer, which is, I guess, every teenager's fantasy, and then stopped by cops and they end up being zombies. She wakes up, it was all a dream, and then she goes to the bathroom and then undresses for some strange reason and then is attacked again by a zombie cop. She must have a thing about cops, I'm not sure. And then again, she wakes up. Nightmare. Oh, it was all a dream.
Yeah. Dreams within dreams.
I really thought you were going to say the thunder and lightning as the comet arrived.
Yeah,
of course.
Which was really like, why? Like a comet isn't going to cause that, so I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it was quite funny to me. I actually laughed out loud when it happened.
Yeah.
Best special effect.
For me, and this is a really basic one as well, but I love the red filter. It is so simple and it so sets the tone, especially for the first act of this movie. It just keeps showing these beautiful empty cityscapes with that red filter that's graduated, and it looks like, I feel like the sky would have a red hue if that happened, and it's just eerie and creepy looking, and I love it.
Yeah.
It definitely set the tone, and I love the fact that when they even went inside buildings, you could still see like red light streaming in from outside. It was just a nice touch that made it way like much more otherworldly, and like it was the end of the world.
Yeah. And I like at the end of the movie that the rain comes down and washes it all away.
Yeah.
And then the blue skies come out and it's all over. Yeah.
Yep.
It's very good. It's very clever.
And then turns into a Brady Bunch movie.
Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
Favorite sound effect.
I struggled with this one, but
I did too.
I wrote this down because I did think it was kind of funny, especially like after watching the movie 4 times. When that monkey wrench hits that guy's skull, the crunch sound that it makes is pretty good. Like it's very satisfying.
Yeah, I think it sells.
It's quite a shock, that
Yeah, I think so too. It really sells that scene. I didn't expect it. I thought for sure, the boyfriend's going to be, the hero of the movie. But no, just immediately killed.
Yeah.
How about you, Conrad?
For me, I thought the scene where Reggie is being interrogated by Geoffrey Lewis, for some reason, there is a dot matrix printer sound in the background, where the old
there?
head goes backwards and forwards. It's zzz, 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 and there's no printer in the room, so I have no idea where this sound is coming from.
God,
other than
I missed that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so quintessential 80s, that dot matrix printer. I really enjoyed hearing it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Insert machinery sound here.
Most funniest moment.
At the end, when Hector is putting his guns and ammo in the trash can, and the little girl says, "Can I have one of those?"
Yeah.
Kind of cracked me up.
Yeah, it is good.
All the funniest moments for me we've already mentioned. Just all the great one-liners. That Buffy scene with the dog. Just every piece of dialogue from Kelli Maroney and Catherine Mary Stewart. Just gold.
Yeah. I have another little moment that I quite like, which is after the evil nurses have attempted to fool the children that they'll be going to see Santa after they've gassed them. That when the scientists discover them after Catherine and Kelli have broken the kids out, they find those nurses strapped to the laughing gas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giggling their asses off with a little sign stuck over the top of them saying, "Going to see Santa."
I love that they took the time to write that out and stick it on there.
Yeah.
Like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's our Mooblies.
And that is. Yeah.
This is Kelli Maroney, and you are listening to Movie Oubliette.
It's final verdict time. Should Night of the Comet survive the apocalypse and ride off into the sunset in a convertible to be loved by all? Or should it be disintegrated into a pile of red dust and swept into the oubliette, never to be watched again? Melinda, you have presented us with Night of the Comet. What are your final thoughts on the film?
I think this movie should definitely get to ride off into the sunset. I think it's a wonderful depiction of the 80s, but not the stereotypical 80s that we think of. It's two very strong female characters who are not too heavy-handed with that. They're just really likable, and you care about them. And like you said, you'd love to see the further adventures of Reggie and Sam and Hector. All three of those characters are just so interesting. And even though the movie stumbles a bit in terms of the third act and possibly just the overall plot in general, I still think that the characters are so strong that you almost don't care because they get you with the characters. And it's the heart of the film. So
I have to say, when I first watched this, didn't quite enjoy it as much as I maybe should have. But I don't know. I think it gets you the second watch and on repeat watching because of those characters. They really draw you into the film and draw you into the predicament of the apocalypse. And you kind of don't care about the lack of plot. You don't care about the terrible scientists and how ridiculous they look. And you just care about the two characters. And I think that's what really sells this film. And I think also if anyone was an 80s kid, this is the film for you. This is the 80s film that you should watch. It just oozes nostalgia. And yeah.
for sure.
If you like the 80s, yeah, watch this film.
Yeah. Well, I have to agree. I mean, the first time I saw it, I remember it being, a little disappointed that it didn't have more action and more zombies because that was the age I was. But there was something about it that stuck with me. And certainly the look of it always stuck with me. And I think that it is on second viewing that you really begin to appreciate it, especially when you're older, that it is the characters, it's the dialogue, it's the sensibility of the film. It does let itself down right at the very end, and there are pacing problems, and the third act is not my favorite, but it's just such a great, unique, fun piece of filmmaking with a lot of verve and with two great female characters and a great Latino character as well. And to see that in 1984 is really great. So if you haven't seen it, if you haven't discovered Night of the Comet, I thoroughly recommend that you do.
Yeah, and also watching it before COVID and after COVID, it's a very different experience.
It is,
definitely resonates now.
Yeah,
It does,
I wasn't even expecting that specifically, but you're right. It really does sort of give you the chills in a different way now, for sure.
It does. Yeah. There you go, Night of the Comet.
It's unanimous.
It is.
Yes.
Off you go. You can ride off into the sunset with DMK.
Passing against the light. Wait for me, DMK.
So, Melinda, it's been wonderful having you on the show, especially all of your research and your insight, as always. Where can people find more of it?
Well, you can find me on retroblasting.com/Dreamland, where I post all of my show notes and all of our episodes, and Dreamland, the Retroblasting podcast, on all of your favorite podcasting apps. So that's where we live.
Yes, I highly recommend the podcast because you cover 80s culture, pop culture in every aspect. And it's not just the toy collecting, which is you cover on the YouTube channel a lot, but also delving into films like Xanadu was an episode that I really enjoyed.
Me too, surprisingly.
It's a curious film.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Probably needs to be
Yeah.
in the oubliette a little bit. But
Oh, it's down there, I'm sure. It's down there. Yeah. So, yeah, just films and TV series and just pop culture items like the Garbage Pail Kids and the Cabbage Patch Kids. It's and the Roswell alien autopsy movie as well. That's a fascinating piece of history when you delve into it. So
I think our favorite episode that we've ever done is the KLF. I think that was where we really sort of realized the depth to which we were happy to go into for research. So, yeah, we like to do the heavy lifting of massive going down every weird tangential rabbit hole to do with a subject so that you don't have to. And then you just sort of sit back and take it all in like, wow, this is really weird. Yeah.
yeah, well, Aaron does a few wisecracks. Love Aaron's wisecracks.
Yes, that is his specialty.
Yeah. check them out. It's really good stuff. And also, obviously, the RetroBlasting YouTube channel and the live streams. It's all good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it is. And if you want to look forward to our good stuff, our future episodes, you can follow us on all social media platforms as Movie Oubliette. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
You can also email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com. We always love hearing from you on any topic, even cheese soufflés.
Yes. And if you want to give us some money, you can become a patron on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You get access to extended segments, and for $5, you get access to our monthly mini-sode.
Yes, our latest one was on Love and Monsters.
Yes. Yeah, new movies.
Yeah, new stuff. It's fun.
Yes. What fun movie are we going to do next episode, Conrad?
Yes, we're leaping forward in terms of time period to 2012, quite recent, where we'll be looking at the Irish-British-American co-production horror thriller drama-y film Byzantium.
Okay, I've been recommended this film a number of times, but I've never watched it.
No, I have to say I wasn't even familiar with it at all, but it does look very promising in terms of director and cast. It's directed by Neil Jordan, who is famous in the 80s for things like Company of Wolves and The Crying Game in the 90s.
Oh,
probably.
wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I have no idea what it is or what to expect at all. So, looking forward to that.
Me too. Can't wait.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we've had an amazing time with you, Melinda. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode.
Great talking to you.
Yes, please check out her podcast, Dreamland, and RetroBlasting on YouTube. It's highly entertaining.
Yes, it is. And that's all from us today. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
I'm not crazy. I just don't give a fuck.